Welcome to Picks the Professor, the sports betting show hosted by a real statistics professor. This is Thursday, April 17th. We've got some Major League Baseball games to cover for you here. I'm joined with cousin Jared, who we've been kind of in and out, it seems like, all week with these shows. It's fun to have a co-host, have a partner trying to talk about these games with.
Yep, definitely. Glad to be back with you. Glad that Jake stepped in, had a show with him earlier this week. So he's off dealing with holiday stuff. So glad that both of us are able to be here. Hopefully today and tomorrow.
Yeah, Easter really snuck up on me. I feel like I don't know if it's a reflection of my life and the craziness, or if that's everybody. It snuck up on everybody.
I think it's everybody. Yeah,
it's everybody. Okay. We had so far we're recording this on Wednesday night. It's been somewhat of a mixed bag so far today on Wednesday. A bunch of things still kind of hanging in the balance as we speak. So kind of things could go either which way. Some quick reminders. Of course, we have a player-based model, and so it's going to matter for things like injuries, promotions, things like that. Average rates 100 higher implies more runs. We are predicting an average game. Anything can happen in one game. And I mentioned this yesterday that you could pick any day, but I mean, I could just go looking at today, the Red Sox and Rays playing a 1-0 game. I don't think anybody saw that one coming. I mean, the total was 9.5. It wasn't just 9. It was 9.5, right? The hook on 9 means something. And, 1-0. No one saw that coming. So it's just a reminder. Weird things happen in baseball. It's all about the long run. We just got to keep our heads down as much as the roller coaster is not fun. And just play the long run, and that's what we do here. And so we'll get to it here shortly. Just a quick reminder, though, if you want all those picks, all that information, Discord access. Dub Club is the place to be with other handicappers, all sorts of information. The link in the show description will get you half off your first month. Because I thought we were going to talk about an afternoon game. In my head, for whatever reason, that's how it was playing out. I don't know why. And then that wasn't what was on the docket today. So we're going to go right to the night games. We do have a few day games, of course. If I'm seeing this right, it looks like 4 or 5, kind of really depending on which time zone you classify yourself. It's about half the games of the day. We do have some top plays and some things we like there. But starting off here at one of the 5 night games, Guardians and the Orioles. We're going to take the Guardians here. Tanner Bybee against Yuki Sugano, who has not looked particularly good. The model's not particularly high on with regards to his performance. He does hit at 386, as I mentioned on yesterday's show. Underlying metrics, though, both in the mid-5s for him. And so that is not overly promising. The Orioles do have a good bullpen. Obviously, the Guardians do as well. And Tanner Bybee is one of the stronger pitchers in baseball, stumbling out of the gate, but still one of the top half of pitchers in baseball. Obviously, the Guardians' offense is a lot to be worried about here. The Orioles' offense is a lot to be worried about. And we saw that here on Wednesday with the Orioles winning 9-1. Because the Guardians haven't had necessarily the start they've wanted, but neither have the Orioles in this one. Right. If we can get past the whole most recent game was 9-1, why are we feeling good about the Guardians here, even though they have not been as good to us so far this year as they've been to us in years past?
Well, and we've talked about the Guardians a couple of times, how they took 2 out of 3. They started the season with 9 straight road games, took 2 out of 3 at Kansas City, and then got swept in San Diego, lost 2 out of 3 to Los Angeles. And I think I said at the time, like, I wasn't necessarily too concerned about the Guardians because that's abnormal to start off with 9 straight road games to start the season. But some also, and playing in the AL Central, like, you were going to have the opportunity to play some, inferior teams in the AL Central. And I'm not saying that Cleveland's great, but just the AL Central in general. And so, of course, then the Guardians did what you would expect. They swept the White Sox, took 2 out of 3 from Kansas City there, and won the first game of Baltimore, like you mentioned, until they lost there tonight. For me, this is just one of those things. I think that the market was a little bit overreacting to that slow Guardians start. And a big advantage at starting pitching here. It's kind of crazy to say that the Orioles have the number 6 bullpen, but still a fairly strong advantage on the relievers here for the Guardians, which is, I think, that depth in the bullpen is important in a game where they just gave up 10 runs and we're throwing out a bunch of pitchers out there. The Guardians being able to kind of lean on that depth in the bullpen, I think, is a big part of it. So I like the direction that the Guardians are heading. I think on the Orioles side, this is just more of like, nobody's really playing great. right now, and I think that's kind of the issue. Rutschman's been fine offensively, not great, but we've talked about the catchers before. Cedric Mullins is playing really well. Tyler O'Neill's playing okay. Other than that, like Gunnar Henderson, not doing great. Colton Cowser, I think he went on the IL. So
I was gonna say they've got a guy or two hurt as well, which
yeah. Jackson Holiday not doing well. So
not doing
this
great.
is just one of those things. Like I see that the Orioles offense is number 6, but it's just they can't get the right people firing on the right cylinders all at the same time. So come back to me in a month. I may go the other way on this one once the Orioles kind of get going. But right now, I think the Guardians are the side to be on.
I really liked a couple of things that you said there. Anytime we can buy low on a team that we think the market is overreacting, underreacting, etc., that always makes for a strong play. And you might be right, because I was a little bit disappointed, of course, as that Guardians start. But I do remember you saying that you were pointing out that, like, hey, let's tap the brakes here. There are a bunch of other teams we could talk about. Should they be tapping the brakes? How worried they should be, right? And the Braves being one of them, right?
Yeah.
But we'll have plenty of time to talk about that as the season goes along and figure out, is that going to be real or not? But with the pitching tonight, though, when you talked about the depth, here's the interesting thing. The Orioles used Yainer Cano, who is, according to Sideline, one of Baltimore's their best setup man. They used Keegan Aiken, who, according to Sideline, is their second best setup man. And they used Gregory Soto, who, according to Sideline, is their third best setup man. And then they used Brian Baker, who, according to Sideline, is their fourth best setup man. All 4 of those pitchers have projections in the sub 100s, again, 100 being average. And the only guy they didn't use is Bautista. Now, Soto only threw an inning, or 1/3 of an inning, but did strike out a guy, get 2 hits. The other guys all went an inning. I don't know if they'll be effective or not the next day, but it's actually working in our favor because the Guardians somehow got through this game, giving up 9 runs, only using 3 pitchers and only using one of them for one batter. It was really just Gavin Williams and Tristan McKenzie. And obviously McKenzie's a guy who's been up and down and, tantalizing, but not a guy that they're counting on right now in that bullpen. Yeah. The guys they're counting on, of course, are, the Sewell, Heron, Smith, Class A grouping. And so they're actually set up pretty well, I feel like, for us on the bullpen. So there's extra benefit. So a couple good reasons here why the Guardians make sense. Doesn't guarantee they'll win, of course. It just means we've got it here at 57% likely to win, meaning we think the price should be minus 133. The fact that we were able to grab this at minus 115 is what makes it a really strong play. If this was at minus 135, if it gets bet up to that point, we'd probably just say, well, the value's gone. We'll have another opportunity, because with baseball, God knows we will have another opportunity coming shortly. Here's a sneak peek, of course, of what you get over on Dub Club. All that information, try to put this out there for every game. You can see here the weather information. Not really much wind to talk about in this one, but a cool night in Baltimore could make for a maybe slightly lower scoring game than average. The total that the books are hanging is 8.5. It's kind of where the book is. So a lot of good information there. If you want to pause and check that out, if you're with us on Dub Club, you've already got all of that for every single game. Royals and the Tigers, another 6:40 p.m. Eastern first pitch. Michael Lorenzen and Reese Olson, and what will be also a chilly night in Detroit with a little bit of a stronger breeze blowing in. We've got this one as potentially a game that might be having its total suppressed a little bit by the weather. So that's something to keep an eye on, especially in the morning as we get closer on the weather. And it is with that in mind that we are taking the under 8.5. Right now, we're playing it at minus 135. If you're seeing it at 8, you're playing it probably more like minus 110. That's an excellent price as well. We're just picking from one book to do stuff from, but under 8 is also excellent as long as you're not paying the minus 135 or something for under 8. As you can see, we've got this projected right around 7. Neither one of these starting pitchers are amazing, both pretty close to league average. Reese Olson has struggled out the gate with regards to his ERA, but his FIP and XFIP are both sub 4 for the season, so I'm still not worried about him. Lorenzen's been very solid. A guy like Lorenzen, we talk, is always right around that 100 rating, always just league average, and that's kind of what he's been doing so far. Royals offensively, not a lot to speak of once you get behind Bobby Witt Jr. The Tigers offensively, just okay bullpens, but really this is all about the weather and that 10-mile-an-hour wind blowing in 50 degrees. Cousin Jared, you love you a good weather under, so I'm sure you're excited for this one.
Yeah. So that's the number one thing here is the weather. The number two thing is the Royals have played 18 games. In one game they scored 11, one game they scored 8. Outside of that, the most runs that they have scored all season is 4. They do not have the ability to string together hits and have big innings. They either can't string together the hits or they can't get a couple guys on base and get a home run. I think they've also tried. I don't know what the number is, but like some crazy number of guys in the leadoff spot already this season. They're just like you mentioned. They're trying to get guys on base ahead of Bobby Witt, and
We've got one of the best players in baseball, and he's just like
they're just like it's like anybody get on base. Like at some point, I almost wonder if they wish they still had Carlos Santana, who even if he can't get any hits, can at least get some walks.
Yeah, a guy who's gonna bat like 087, but with an on base of like 342, and you're gonna be like, that's fine.
Yeah. We'll take
get him on in front of Witt. Witt'll hit a triple, and he'll score easily.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the other thing. Kansas City just really been inept offensively, and then the Tigers. Like the Tigers have played well this season, but when you look at the times that they've put up some crooked numbers, it's been against like the White Sox, or it's been against the Twins, or it's been against Milwaukee, who was having starting pitching issues. When they have ran into, average pitching, they've been fine. They haven't been bad, but they haven't been great either. And so I like the Tigers. I expect them to have an average game. And average for the Royals this season, they're going to get 2 or 3, 4 runs. So I think this game probably ends, 4-3, one way or the other. I don't think that it gets, very high scoring at all. And the weather is just a kind of a cherry on top of all of that.
Yeah, again, some great points you brought up there. I want to kind of just elaborate on one of them that I thought was interesting, because a lot of times when you bring up these points, I like to kind of go look at what the model would say or some of these underlying things and just kind of pull up and see if there's something from the data that amplifies what you're saying. And here's a good one here on the Royals and their offense and Bobby Witt. I think Zimborski wrote an article in the offseason right before the season started about like Royals fans are going to hate me, but I think their team is trash. It's just Bobby Witt, basically. And he was nicer than that. He's a nice guy.
Right.
As much as I've interacted with him, but he's very much just like, look, it's Bobby Witt and that's it. And this might be a really rough year for him. And I know that people were, and he has to write these pieces when he sees these things because he's wanting to try to get the information out there to us. And I think he nailed it on this one. And I think that's no better exemplified than 2 things that I see in my model. Number 1 is I have what I call a projected number of runs created. It doesn't really mean a lot. It's almost like a runs created type metric that we use, but it's more amorphous than that. But it's a number such that the higher it is, the more impact the player has. And all you need to know about the Royals is that the number for Bobby Witt is almost twice as high as everybody else on the team, which is insane. And that's then emboldened by, I have a basically like the IQ rating, the 100 rating for offensively, right? Bobby Witt is a 141. Their next best hitter I've got at a 104. And that's the bottom line. It's basically the Angels all over again with Trout. And except there's no Ohtani, they do have some better pitching than the Angels had. But you do wonder offensively if it's going to be the same thing, even down to the fact that the guy's a stud defender in the middle of the field at a key position. Just can they figure it out? I don't know. They've got time.
Well, and the other thing is they're in the AL Central, which is going to be a little bit easier than the AL West in those Trout seasons. So that I think that's the other thing you have to look at.
That's a good point. And we talked about the AL being so strong and so deep. The White Sox, we don't know if they're ever going to compete again, when that would be. And I think maybe to your other point, it's not so much that the AL Central is overall weak as much as they just don't spend as much money as the AL East. And some of the AL West teams have done. They're not quite as smart analytically maybe as some of those A's Moneyball teams were at the start of the Trout era. And then the Astros really picked it up and the Mariners picked it up, right? And not to say that the Guardians aren't doing smart things with their money, but it's going to be a little bit easier to compete with the likes of the Guardians and the Tigers. It's going to be some of these Astros perennial teams or anybody in the AL East or whatever. So it's another point there. So we're going to go ahead again, go under 8.5. A lot of juice on this. That's just because again, we're only playing one line, one book. If you're playing under 8, that's fine. As long as the juice is reasonable. Even under 7.5, I think is fine as long as your juice is reasonable here. As this number should be a whole lot lower. I'm expecting it to be a whole lot lower by the time you're watching this, because I think as the weather gets closer, becomes more confirmatory that the weather's going to be cold, chilly, wind blowing in. This has a 2-0 feel to it, in my opinion, for some of these Midwest games in April. And that'll wrap us up with the Angels and the Rangers. The late game here. I mentioned there was not a lot of late action on Wednesday. The late game on Thursday, 8:05. First pitch here. And we are going to be clicking on the wrong screen there. We are going to be backing The under in this one as well, under 9.5. We're paying -105. The model thinks this should be closer to 9. And it's not on the strength of Jack Kohanowitz as much as it is off of Kumar Rocker, who the model is a lot higher on. You can see that in their grades. They're about 10 points better. That is mostly due to the fact that the underlying metrics coming into the season were just that much higher on Rocker than they were on Kohanowitz. So far this season, neither pitcher has done very well. I believe that's why this number is at 9.5, because even while their ERAs are ballooned, their underlying metrics are ballooned. Both of them have FIPS in the mid-5s. Both of them have xFIPS in the upper 4s. The difference, though, again, coming into the season, we were higher on Kumar Rocker based off his minor league data, previous things, pedigree, all sorts of things that go into that. And that right there, we think probably does just enough to keep this at a game. Maybe that should be 9 instead of 9.5. If Rocker was as bad as Kohanowitz, then I would say 9.5 makes a lot of sense. But I think we're getting a little bit of value here because Rocker's maybe a little bit better than that. This Rangers offense hasn't started off very well. We've talked about them maybe struggling a little bit out of the gate. But their bullpen has really picked it up. And so if their bullpen picks it up, Rocker's not terrible. We think this has a good chance of hanging in the single digits, making the under 9.5 a good look. Cousin Jared, a little bit of a different situation here. Not a weather under, not an under with stud pitching, but a number where we are getting a really high number. And sometimes that matters more than anything else, right?
Yeah. So that's exactly right. So I've got a couple of things I'll point out here, and then circle back to how you actually made my point for me without even knowing it. So number one, the Rangers played 17 games. They've only had 4 games go over 9.5. Can't say the same for the Angels. The Angels have had quite a few games go over 9.5,
which is why their offense is up in the top 10. Which we haven't said that in years since.
Yeah.
When's the last time Trout and Ohtani have been healthy enough for us to say they had a top 10 offense?
And it's why their relievers are number 27. So all of those things. So maybe those kind of balance out. But we circled back, and you talked at the very beginning of the show. You talked about how the Rays and the Red Sox played a 1-0 game, and the total was 9.5, and the half means something. I am going under here just on principle. Like, it is very tough in a Major League Baseball game for a book to hang a number like 9.5, and there not be any, weather or
it's not Cincinnati in the summer, Kansas City in the summer, Atlanta on a 100-degree day, Wrigley with the wind blowing out,
it's
right?
Not Colorado,
Boston,
it's just this doesn't fall into that category. And so it's just one of those things, like, there is enough data, I feel, historical data, to say there is a reason that 9 is such a common outcome. And if there is not an extenuating circumstance, I'm going to go under 9.5. That is it's why we see most of why I'm playing this.
Yeah, most of the totals we see are 7 to 9, right?
Yeah.
And then we see those 6.5, 9.5s. We go, that 6.5, do we really go under it? Because there's only so many ways we can win that. We got to be really liking it, right? Yep. Or we go over at a principle, just saying people score runs, right? Same thing on the up end, right? We got to say, sometimes teams just don't score.
And I will give an example. I will give you an example of this. You came on the show yesterday. You said we were going to go under 8 in the Braves Blue Jays game, and I guess everybody realized, oh crap, Strider's coming back. That was bet all the way down to 7, and the projection was 7.4 today. And so, you know what I did? I played over 7 because I was like, 7 is a common outcome. And there, Strider only goes 4 innings in his first, game back. Like, I felt like I've got a lot of push protection on 7. I'm going to play over 7. I didn't foresee the Braves striking out 19 times.
Yeah, that's bonkers.
Yeah. So we come on here and talk about why we like these plays, but sometimes, like, at the end of the day, the math and the statistics are the math and the statistics and the data. And sometimes plays are just good because we have so much data to tell us they're good plays. I can't pass up the opportunity to go under 9.5.
That's a good point there. And, just another point to that, they're playing a game right now that's in the bottom of the 6th inning, and it's 3-1. And so it's obviously possible for the Angels to play in a lower scoring game. And, maybe we'll see the same thing that we saw in Tampa here tonight. Maybe we'll see a 1-0 game. But if not, again, I think, and I kind of want to wrap up here, and it kind of dovetails with everything that we've been talking about, which is, why do we even have a model? Why did I build the model? And the answer, honestly, look, just to bare my soul, is I'm not smart enough. Like, I'm a very smart person, and I know a lot of numbers and a lot of math and everything, but I'm not smart enough to be able to watch all these games and read whatever I want to read and be able to figure out how should I know if this total should be 8.9 or 9.3? Right? How do you figure that stuff out? And that's where it's interesting. And that's where we have the model to help ground us. And I want to make this point specifically. I don't want to make this grandiose, point. I want to make a very specific point that I think will hit home, here with a lot of people is Major League Baseball players are really good. And what that means is the worst ones are still really good. We talk about that a lot. When we talk about a player being bad, we oftentimes will come out and be like, caveat, like he still would destroy me. He's so much better than I am, right? I'm not trying to, they're still really good. But what that means is sometimes when we talk about a guy like Jack Kohanowitz here, who the model has as a 118, and we talk about these Angels relievers, these are still really good athletes. And the difference between how good they are and the best players isn't that much. It's just that we see it as a bunch because we see these finite details because we're comparing them only to that universe. And that's where this sometimes helps because our brains a lot of times, and not to say, look, I'm saying all this and this game might go 12-7 and we're just going to look like fools. Because again, anything can happen in one game, right?
Yeah.
But in the long run, that's why we have these models to help us kind of figure out and say, you know what? I think this pitcher's bad. I know I don't trust this bullpen. I know this offense, blah, blah, blah. But when we put it all together and we know kind of where everybody is relatively, we know that this tends to produce a game that looks like a certain way. And the books are seeing it as half a run different than that. Boom, we've got some advantage. And that's where it is. If I think we've got some advantage here because people are looking at these Angels scores, they're thinking about the Rangers offense from years past, they're thinking about looking at Rocker's ERA, and they're thinking, 9.5 without going, but here's the other reasons why you just get carried away. And sometimes those 9.5s and 6.5s, you just got to be careful on. And so we're on the upper end of that here at the 9.5 going under and the nightcap. Cousin Jared, that's all we've got here. We'll be back for one more show before the weekend. And hopefully, again, we'll start moving on some of these tasks that I've got on here. Really, I just want to keep this slide up every day to make me feel guilty.
As a reminder,
It's a reminder, and the guilt meter will eventually get high enough that I'll actually do something about it. So if you've been waiting, viewer, I mean, I really appreciate your patience. Thanks for hanging in there with me. It's been wild times around here. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
Cousin Jared, anything from you as we wrap up and head into Thursday?
I don't know if you watched the show with me and Jake, but he made the mistake of asking me a college football question at the very end. And awesome. So we ended up spending like 3 minutes talking about Nico leaving Tennessee because he didn't get his NIL deal done. Just not to make that mistake. Jake didn't know. So
I do know. I was able to watch that. I was able to watch the last one that y'all did. This one, I think, with this week, with all the travel and everything, I just kind of was editing getting out there. But that is funny. And we'll be talking about a lot of that stuff coming up soon. I mean, the college football will be here before you know it. Obviously, this is about the time when we would have had spring games, but spring games are now mostly gone. So we're, I think we're probably getting to the point where it's starting to be closer than it was. Have we reached the midway point? I think we've crossed that, right?
Yeah, we may have crossed the midway point, but I have to start.
You're the person who needs to know these things.
But I have to start studying the rosters and stuff so much earlier than I used to because, like, I don't know who's where at this point. So let this transfer window work out, and then I'll start looking at stuff.
The roster updating that I have to do before the college football season is by far the most tedious and impossible thing. And you might say, like, well, why is it basketball harder? There's only like 8 guys on a basketball team that matter. And so there's more basketball teams, but there's only 8 players that matter. Whereas on college football, I mean, we're going like 40, 50 deep on these rosters. And then try to figure out who might play. Sometimes early on, we're going 60, 70 deep because we're like, we don't even know which guy's going to play. And so we're trying to move all those guys around is just, I think someone tweeted this. I saw this. It creates an opportunity for us bettors, and I think it's why we've done really well with it. It creates an opportunity for people like me who've got a player-based model, and we can track all that stuff and work around it. We can get edges, but it creates so much work.
Yeah, it's a lot of work at the beginning.
Maybe this year I'll start earlier. I say that every year, and it never happens. So maybe one day I'll learn.
We can all hope.
We can all hope. All right, that's all we got for you. Thanks for watching. We do wish you the best of luck and remind you that you can eat your betting money, but please do not bet your eating money.